Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Severance, Season 1, Episode 8, What's for Dinner is the episode I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be dissecting, I'm going to be spoiling. So if you do not want to be spoiled on this episode of the Apple TV original Severance, I would suggest not watching / listening to this. But if you are here to be spoiled and enjoy the dissection, getting deep down into this episode, which is the second to last episode, the penultimate episode of Season 1, then welcome and let's get it started. This episode starts off with Irving. We get to see Irving's outie. He's outside on a bench reading a book with his dog Radar. The book that he is reading is The Thoughts of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, which, according to this, is like a book of kind of like a motivational book for somebody who was alive in those times, who survived a lot of like atrocities, which is kind of an interesting book for Irving to be reading. Very similar in a lot of ways, yet very different. I mean, tonally, I'm sure very different than Ricken's book. But both books seemingly coming from the same place. Just one, I'm sure, is written with a bit more class and a bit more depth than Ricken's book. However, very similar book. So he's outside reading this book with his dog. He ends up going back to his apartment. He lives in an apartment building, which is kind of interesting that these people who are part of the Severance that live in, like, assumingly live in Lumon housing, that some of them, like Mark and Mrs. Selvig, live in a house, while others live in an apartment, like Irving. It'll be interesting to see. It seems, well, I guess we don't really know. We got to see a little bit of what Dylan's home looks like. Don't know if it's necessarily a house or an apartment, and we don't know anything about Helly yet. But an interesting thing that he lives in an apartment. Either way, he goes inside, makes himself some coffee, and we see that Irving is an artist. He is a painter. He has many of the same paintings around his place that at first glance look like the hallway to the break room within Severance, within Lumon. It is a dark hallway, except for in his paintings there is a red arrow that is pointing down above the door, which is not something that is displayed above the break room. So it is a bit different, but it is a painting, these images that clearly, as an artist, he has to get out of him. Like, is this image that is in his head for whatever reason, that clearly from his innie, that is inspiring him to paint. And he's got multiple. You see where the black sludge when he daydreams at work, and you see this like black oily substance that's leaking every time he dozes off at work. We see that is representative of the black paint that he uses, which he squeezes a copious amount of onto his palette, and using a palette knife goes off painting while listening to Motorhead's Ace of Spades, which is far more aggressive of music than you would assume Irving would listen to. It makes sense that Irving is an artist, while his innie is obsessed with the art that was around the Lumon offices on the Severance floor. It is a subject that bonded him to Bert within Lumon, so it makes sense that he is an artist on the outside. However, his temperament on the outside seems to be more on the aggressive side, at least the music he listens to and his painting style, using a palette knife, just aggressively filling these wood panels with paint. But I appreciated that. Also explains what he had under his fingernails in a previous episode. So we get a bunch of answers to Irving's character at the beginning of this episode. So cut to now we're inside Lumon. All 4 of the MDR department is there. Helly is focused at her desk, working hard, clearly, trying to get things done. Irving and Dylan are in the kitchen area, and they are kind of impatiently waiting because they've been done with their work for a week, and everybody's just kind of antsy and wanting to do all they can to help Helly succeed at hitting their goal at the end of the quarter to hit that 100% goal. And Irving has a very interesting kind of way to do so, to inspire in the classic Irving way. So let's play that clip.
She's not gonna make it, is she?
You should be at your desks.
We've both been done a week. What is there to do? Is she gonna make it?
She's gonna make it. Mark. Yes, don't laugh. And I just wonder if it might be helpful for us to stand behind her and perhaps chant her name. Okay, she'll make it. Just let her focus.
Cobel and Milchick are also anxiously waiting. They're watching on the monitors because the only thing they seem to be invested in, the only thing they care about is them hitting their goal, their end of the quarter quota. So they are anxiously watching. Cobel tells Milchick to start prepping for her success, even though she hasn't done it yet. Everybody's, very nervous. Apparently, I'm assuming this is the last day that they can hit their goal. So she tells Milchick to start prepping regardless, just in hopes that she will do it. She tells Milchick to get an end of the quarter wellness check for Mark, and then Milchick questions why she would do that, which obviously we now know kind of why he would question that. We now know that Mark's late wife is Miss Casey. His late wife isn't dead. She is part of Lumon as well as a part-time innie. And so clearly the reasonings for Cobel constantly trying to give Mark these wellness checks is to test out the efficacy and the actual trying to test out and make sure that these chips that are implanted are actually working. Cut back to inside MDR. Helly finally finishes, and as she finishes, as anybody who's ever finished a video game knows, there is a little end of game cinematic that happens, and when she finishes her work, this ambiguous work that they are all doing at MDR, there is a beautiful 8-bit cinematic that plays. So let's play that clip.
She do it?
She did it.
Fuck and yes.
Oh my goodness.
I knew you could do it, Helly R. Even in your darkest moments, I could see you arriving here. In refining your macro data file, you have brought glory to this company and to me, Kier Eagan. I love you. But now I must away, for there are others who need me around the world. Goodbye, Helly R, and thank you.
Boom. That's quota. We did it.
Good work.
And just as when I was a kid, we would accomplish and beat a game, the excitement that fills the room in MDR was just the same. And at the end of this 8-bit animation, Kier literally flies away. Like, just jumps off a cliff and flies away. Kind of has, like, Reading Rainbow kind of vibes to it as well. And Irving's pumped. It's on now. Irving is pumped. Obviously, the reasoning for this getting everything done by quota is to get the waffle party, because they need that waffle party as a reason for one of them to stay behind to activate the overtime procedure. So everything is falling into place. Irving is pumped. Cut to Cobel and Mark. They're in Cobel's office. Both of them laughing very awkwardly. Cobel in her, just like such an unhinged character. Not only the person she is outside of Severance when she's Selvig, but also when she's inside, and just a super horrible person. Like, she is laughing like she's laughing like a crazy person. She's laughing like a villain, really. And Mark, she asks who Mark thinks should have the waffle party, and Dylan, he recommends Dylan, and Cobel's like questioning. It's like, you can take it. Anybody can take it. It doesn't have to be Dylan. But, Dylan, as we saw early on when Dylan was obsessed with all of the different incentives that they got, the waffle party was something that he was stoked on, has clearly gotten before. And we still don't know what that is, but in this episode, we will find out. So Dylan gets the waffle party, and Cobel tells Mark that she scheduled him. She says she's scheduled for all of the department heads, but she scheduled a wellness check for the end of quarter. And she thanks Mark. One of the few times Miss Cobel has shown any kind of positive reinforcement towards Mark while inside Lumon. So it's kind of a awkward but still kind of on-brand interaction between those two.
Let's take a little break from the Ray Taylor Show to promote my live art streams. That's right, I am an artist as well as a podcaster, and I paint live every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific time. Head on over, the best place ever for streaming, youtube.com/inspired disorder. That's right, every Thursday at 4:20, you can watch me paint the many faces. Every week, I paint 7 new faces of abstract portraits, ink on paper, and you can watch that happen. You can hang out with me while I listen to a classic episode from one of my favorite podcasts. Head on over to youtube.com/inspired disorder and check it out. Say hi, let's hang out, let's have some fun, and let's paint some faces. Now let's get back to the show.
Cut to Mark at the wellness check, waiting in the lobby, reading some of the quotes that are around the wellness lobby, the Eagan quotes. Miss Casey comes out and brings them in. There's no tree anymore. Mark points out the tree is missing, as well as notices the boxes that are being packed within the wellness area. And apparently there's a new wellness director that's coming in, and Miss Casey is, quote-unquote, retiring. And, of course, Mark feels guilty, obviously, knowing that he kind of messed up Miss Casey when he took Helly, kind of removed Helly from her responsibilities, created a situation where Miss Casey was punished for not keeping an eye on Helly, and she was sent to the break room. But she plays, she turns on the music to start the wellness check, so there's music playing, calming, relaxing music along with bird chirping, and it's going to be an augmented session, and Mark asks if there's any way he can fix it, and Miss Casey goes into a bit of her reality as an innie, that she's only been alive as an innie for 107 hours. That is her in 30-minute increments, as that's how long these wellness checks go. So out of 170 hours, 30 minutes apiece, that has been her existence within this Lumon place, which is one of the reasons why she's out of it, assuming that's the only reason. But her favorite part was the 8 hours that she was sent to watch Helly. So before that, she'd only been awake for 99 hours in half-hour increments at a time. Just in this room, reading things, reading attributes of people, of their outies that are good. Like a very sad existence for 30 minutes at a time. And she got one opportunity to spend 8 hours with the MDR crew while watching Helly, and she said it was a highlight of her life, which is just sad. It's just sad that was just watching somebody work, taking notes, was the highlight of her life. And it was the longest she was awake. Meanwhile, we also see Cobel, as always, watching this session going on. And then Miss Casey goes back to reading her list of attributes of Mark's outie that are good. These are the things of your outie that are good. Cut to Milchick in Cobel's office, and he's talking to Milchick about how the fact that Mark and Miss Casey don't know each other, they don't recognize each other. It was his late wife. If he was going to recognize anybody that he knew from the outside, it would be Miss Casey. So Milchick obviously thinks it's a win. The chips are actually working, which further makes me it kind of solidifies this whole thing as just being an experiment. Like, their numbers, whether they actually are part of anything, if they're actually doing anything, I think it's all just an experiment. Like, the number thing is just the scientific replacement for work. Like, we can get these people to do a job that is seemingly meaningless. Like, they don't even have to know the meaning of their job to complete it. We can control them, and they will complete any task we give them within this environment because that's all they know. And it's all just kind of a proof of concept to show that the chips work, and that probably that this can be used in other applications, which if the government's involved, I would imagine, and it seems like it's being used for pregnancies and childbirth, that not only would this procedure be used for other medical procedures, not only be used for working environments, but you could see it being used in military applications. Like, when you sign up to be in the Army or any branch of the military, you get this chip, this Lumon chip inserted in your brain, and they can turn you off at any moment. They have complete control. They can train you to do whatever you want because you're so disconnected from whatever past you want. If they say kill the enemy, that enemy could literally be your family and you wouldn't even know. That's just my hypothesis on potential things this show could go to in next seasons. But Milchick is stoked that the chip works. There's no memory. It's a win. Cobel tells Milchick to take Miss Casey back down to the testing floor. So now we see Milchick escorting Miss Casey, and we see this dark hallway that Irving's outie was painting, which is not the hallway that leads them to the break room, as the doors were different. Obviously, for the break room, there's not a red arrow. This hallway leads them to the testing floor that is downstairs. It is an elevator with the arrow pointing down. So even farther down below the severance floor is the quote-unquote testing floor where Miss Casey lives. And on her way, she asks Milchick if her outie is happy, if she's a happy person out there. And, of course, Milchick pretty much gives her the generic type of answer that would have been on one of her wellness checklists that she would have read to all of the different people who are severed. Like, just a generic answer to make you feel like, but like a corporate type of answer that doesn't have any meaning behind it. Just something, a piece of straight propaganda just to tell you what you want to hear. So she goes down, she goes into the elevator and heads down. That's where you see that red light come on, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe. And we don't have, so far, we've never seen anybody. This is the first time we've seen this hallway, but for some reason, I would imagine maybe Irving came from the testing facility at one point before he went to MDR. And that's why he knows. Like, there's some reason why Irving's innie knows that hallway and has seen that elevator before. And aside from Milchick or Cobel, somebody that's in management that would have seen it, like, the only other thing would have been that potentially his innie had experience in the testing floor, which is not something that they come from. It's like, we've seen how they get integrated in, how they start off on the boarding table and they get the integration thing and they come in, and it's none of it had to do. It's the first time we've seen or heard of the testing floor. So Mark back in MDR, Dylan asking about Miss Casey. He tells them that she's retiring. Of course, everybody's kind of concerned about that. Dylan is asking about, her because he wants to be friends. Obviously, he's got a crush on her or whatever. And they want to know if there's anything they can help. Obviously, they're about to do this thing to wake themselves up on the outside. And it's not something that they should necessarily add to the mix at this point. Right? Obviously, they'll want to help Miss Casey at some point, but it's not something that they can do right now. Milchick shows up. There's going to be a pre-party before the waffle party where everybody can participate in this egg bar. They got deviled eggs. They're going to play music. They got the lighting thing going on. A celebration for Helly finally hitting quota. And Dylan is given a prize because he's the 3-time refiner of the quarter. So this is his 3rd time being chosen for the waffle party. That's why he loves them so much. He's experienced them already 3 times, which is only 3 quarters. So it's only, in the severed universe, who knows how long their quarters are, if they're actually, a quarter of a year. I mean, they could literally make a quarter 5 years long, but it seemingly, he's only not even, so other people have experienced the waffle party, assuming, than just Dylan, because he's only done it 3 times, assuming there's 4 quarters in a year. But he gets a special prize. We don't see it, but we see the reactions of everybody else where they're all kind of touched with this prize that Dylan got. They all kind of give him a pat on the back, and they're showing solidarity as a team. And Milchick's like, okay, let's change this energy up, I guess. And they start, doing their whatever, eating their stuff, talking, chit-chatting. And Milchick again brings out the camera, starting to snap more pictures. Helly talking to Dylan. She offers to stay for Dylan again because he's got a kid. She's like, don't you want to go see your kid? And Dylan knows that this is just the first step. This isn't them getting out and getting free. This is all in an effort to do that permanently and to end them being innies. So because he's already been out there, he doesn't have a problem staying. He believes in himself. That belief in himself that he's had doing his job as a refiner, the reason why he's gotten all the incentives, the finger traps, the caricatures, the 3-time refiner of the quarter waffle parties, Like, he believes in himself, and he's not deterred. He will get this mission done. And, so he's doesn't want to trade places with anybody. And he knows it's just the first step. Cut to Cobel heading to her office, runs into Natalie, who is the intermediary between them and the board. She has a little earpiece where she talks to the board and kind of dispenses the board's information and does these kind of quote-unquote board meetings. And she flashes some pictures of Helly hanging herself in the elevator, which is something Cobel is trying to keep a secret from the board. They found out. Somebody ratted her out, and she mentions that the fact that Petey had been reintegrated, and they're like, "Oh, this is not it." And she's like, "Listen, this is." The board also found out that Cobel had been spending time with Mark's sister on the outside. So the board has found out all of the secretive things that Cobel has been doing. Whether Grainer ratted her out before he died, or Milchick maybe ratted her out. It's unclear how they found out, but they found out, and Cobel is pretty beat up about it. And she's like, she's asking, like, she doesn't believe that Natalie is relaying honestly the messages of the board. And it's like, do they know that you're firing me? She's being suspended and fired. And for the first time ever, we see the board respond with a verbal yes. So there is a board somewhere. And they finally replied with a yes. And she's begging to explain herself, and Natalie informs her that they ended the call. Meanwhile, cut to Irving standing in front of a portrait of Kier, and underneath the portrait are all of the different compliance handbooks, the books that Irving worships. They are his Bible. They are the things he quotes. They are the things he worships. And he pulls one out and flips to a specific passage in a specific book and reads this passage while looking at Kier. And let's play that clip right now.
And now in each swing of your axe or swipe of your pen, the sum of your affections, that through me they may be purified and returned. No higher purpose may be found than this, nor any higher love.
And we see Irving give a smile after he slams. He puts his deviled egg on the page as he finishes that passage and slams it shut, and gives a smile to Kier, because he is, out of all of these characters, he has been the most indoctrinated into the Lumon, the Kier way of thinking, the Kier way of existing. He has been like the most religiously devout to the Kier way, and he has finally been woken up after they got rid of his love, Bert. He is like completely changed. Like, the edge on Irving is amazing. It really makes sense that he's listening to Motorhead. His outie is listening to Motorhead while aggressively painting. That kind of edge is kind of seeping through Irving's innie. Cut back to Helly and Mark are chit-chatting. She has the theory that the baby goats that they found, are the ones that lay the eggs, and they laugh. And there's clearly a spark between these two. She asks Mark if he's scared. Of course, he says yes. He doesn't want to screw up. What if they don't wake up? you know, and she's like trying to calm him down. It's like, listen, Lumon's too dumb to notice. It's all like in Helly's mind. It's all a scam. It's all a ruse. It's all just them trying to scare us to think that they're always watching when they're not. I mean, Cobel is watching a lot of the times. Milchick is watching a lot of the times. But those are the only two people we've seen. Grainer's dead. So for the audience, we know that at least we've not seen anybody else, really. Although there clearly could be, because somebody was there to control the switches when Milchick woke up Dylan on the outside. And it wasn't Cobel, and it wasn't Grainer, because they were both outside of Lumon. So there are other people that could have been there to do the thing for that we just haven't seen yet. But Helly's pretty solid on the fact that they're just too stupid to know. And they're worried. They're worried that their outies are assholes. Helly is pretty sure that she's pretty confident she knows her outie is an asshole. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the way. I mean, asshole would be kind of a pretty decent way, pretty nice way to describe Helly's outie at this point. After we've seen how she's remarked her remarks to Helly wanting to resign. And Mark just hopes his outie cares about something. Like, he doesn't want, he wants there to be he wants to know that he's fighting for somebody that's good on the outside. And then Helly thanks Mark for at least pretending to care about something inside. Like, she notices and appreciates what Mark has tried to do to help her adjust to this kind of new reality of being an innie, working for Lumon, working in the Severed department. And Mark replies with, "Oh, it's easy to care." Like, there's clearly some like flirting going on. They are passing back and forth the joy balloon to each other, and it's kind of sweet. It's kind of sweet. There's definitely a little bit of spark between Mark and Helly. Cut back to Milchick. He says that the party's over. He's got to deal with a management issue, but he will be back to take Dylan to the Perpetuity Wing, to take Dylan to Kier's house in the Perpetuity Wing so he can celebrate his waffle party, to enjoy his waffle party. And we see the management issue that Milchick has to deal with is escorting Cobel out, as she has just been fired, and she is being escorted out by Milchick. Kind of a crazy thing to happen. She has been fired. The person that is like clearly the most like extremist. She's like the religious extremist for Kier, for Eagan, for Lumon. And he takes her key card and escorts her to the stairwell. I believe the same stairwell that Helly tried to leave.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote The Many Faces. That's right, I am also an artist. I do ink paintings on paper of abstract faces. A new face, a new painting gets released every single day over at inspireddisorder.com. So head on over to my website to purchase original artwork directly from the artist. Also, there are prints available for select images. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com, buy original art, buy prints if that's your jam, if you want 8x10 prints on high quality paper. Also, if you're looking to wear some art, there are shirts available with original artwork by myself. Select faces from The Many Faces are also available in t-shirt form. You go to inspireddisorder.com, you buy original artwork, you buy prints, you buy shirts. You're supporting an artist directly. And if you're the type of person that likes to invest in NFTs, there are also NFTs available for select faces. Go to inspireddisorder.com now. And now let's get back to the show.
So cut back to the MDR crew in the little kitchen area. Mark makes sure to let Dylan know that only to wake up the three of them, only focus on their department. Don't worry about anybody else. He gives Dylan the card. Helly gives him the instructions. And Mark tells everybody to prepare for anything. When you go up that elevator, prepare. You could wake up at any point. You could be driving. You could be around a bunch of people. Be prepared. But make sure you find somebody you trust, you think you can trust. You don't know anybody up there. Find somebody you think you can trust and tell them everything. Tell them everything because you don't know how long. There's no time to waste. Don't go digging into finding out more about what your outie is about. You know, Irving is on task, which who knows. We've seen Irving break the mission, like go AWOL for Bert. So we'll see what happens with Irving, but he seems determined for sure to stay on task. And Mark brings out Ricken's book that, you know, he wants to share. It's like, I've been hiding this. I've been reading this. And he, in an effort to kind of motivate the team, he reads a passage from the book. Let's play that clip.
I probably should have told you guys. But, I get this. And there was a part of it that, well, our job is to taste free air. Your so-called boss may on the clock that taunts you from the wall, but my friends, the hour is yours. Page 197 slaps.
I love Dylan. Page 197 slaps. He, like, by far my favorite character. Dylan is the man. I love his, like, every aspect of this character is my favorite part of this show. He adds so much joy to watching this show that is so confusing and so stressful at times. But yeah, I appreciate that. And you can see that this moment is the moment where the team is strong. The genes are on and the team is strong. Okay, they are ready to get to work to make this thing happen. Cut to all of them at the elevator. Irving's going to be the first one up. As he goes up, it's like, let's find out what's for dinner. The first time they've had dinner or had the opportunity to have dinner. I mean, you think about their existence inside Severed. Like, they get lunch, which who knows what lunch is. It is a Lumon branded lunch, I'm sure. We've seen their snack situation. But as far as meals go, they don't get to experience all the pleasures of that await them on the outside. And you know, Irving on his way up. Let's see what's for dinner. So that leaves Helly and Mark at the elevator. And they're going back and forth again. It's like, maybe we're going to meet our spouses. Maybe we're each other's spouses. Like, clearly, in this episode, I mean, there was a little taste of it in the last one. Dylan saw it. Dylan saw, you know, Mark kind of get a little eyeballing, get some hearts and some butterflies when it comes to Helly. In the last one, they went away and they bonded in their little walk in the previous episode, and you see this relationship kind of forming between the two of them, which is a struggle as the audience, knowing that Miss Casey is his dead wife. Like, obviously, like, I'm rooting for Mark in however it works out. I don't know how this is all going to work out, but I like the little connection that he has with Helly. And clearly it's, you know, both ways. She appreciates what he's done for her and all that. And whether they are spouses, whether they have spouses or are spouses on the outside, they are willing to go find out. They are willing to go see what's going to happen. As Helly's about to go up, before the doors close, she opens the doors back up and she gives Mark a kiss. Just in case things, you know, turn out a certain way or for later, like after this they come back, just in case she wanted to give him a kiss real quick, which is a sweet, like, it's so weird. It's like the complexity of this love triangle, this crazy love triangle, all these unanswered questions. But Helly goes up, and Mark gives one last look around the lobby, almost kind of like a look that you do when you're saying goodbye to the place you work, right? It's nearing the end of your time at this place. This could very well be the last time they ever, like, if things go poorly, like, depending on how this goes, this might be the last time any of them ever see each other, ever come back. So Mark is kind of giving that look of saying goodbye. So he goes up after he waits a while, and as he's leaving, Lumon, he sees that they are starting to set up for this gala that's supposed to be happening. Cut to Dylan going over the procedure in the bathroom as it's kind of almost their only sanctuary inside of Lumon, the place where there's most likely not any cameras, where they have some privacy. At least it seems that way. Like, if they had cameras in there, they would have seen Mark reading Ricken's book the entire time. They would have seen that that's where Dylan had hid that card, that little illustration card. So that's where Dylan is, going over the procedures one more time. Milchick is ready to take him to his waffle party, and Dylan asks for a bit of time to just keep going over the thing. So he escorts him finally to the Perpetuity Wing, through the Perpetuity Wing, to the replica Kier house that resides in the back of the Perpetuity Wing. And the waffle party has begun. He has a stack on the dining room table. There's a stack of waffles, butter. He's got syrup. There's a glass of milk. And Dylan gets to eating. And at the end of this stack of waffles, printed on the plate, is a statement, "Go now to the founder's bed." He picks up this mask of Kier and heads on to the bed. And right next to the mask is a whip, like an S&M whip. And each kind of strap, like a whip that has like these 9 straps on it. And the reason why I know it's the 9 straps is because it is the 9 core Lumon principles. And each of these principles is listed on this strap, which is the first touch of like, okay, this religious thing is also tied to sex in some way. It's like our first taste on how, like, I guess, perverse this cult-like place of Lumon is. So he goes, he's laying on the bed, he's got the mask on, and then all of a sudden these dancers come out. There's 4 dancers, 3 women, 1 man. They're all wearing lingerie. The guy's wearing like some, spandex, whatevers. But they're all wearing masks themselves. Similarly to the Kier mask. But these masks, one of them is a joker, one is like a bride, the other is like an old lady, and the dude has a goat mask on. And we all know there's baby goats in the building, and now it's like, well, what are those baby goats? And they're all dancing sexually, they're all wearing, it is very much like this is a performance. This is not only... Are there any, the advantage of this waffle party is they get to experience breakfast, right? They never get to experience breakfast. They've never experienced breakfast. The waffle party is their first experience at any breakfast foods. And, what a delight, what a decadent kind of a breakfast than waffles with syrup and butter, right? So, like, I mean, obviously... If you know about the world and know about food, maybe not the most extravagant, but still, for an innie, eating waffles with syrup, a stack of waffles with syrup, is just like a glorious experience. And then now there's clearly some like slightly ritualistic thing going on, but clearly some sexual things. So there's like part of this waffle party is to experience sexual pleasure, seemingly. We don't see that happening, but that's what it seems like part of this waffle party is, which is clearly one of the reasons why somebody would want to not only get 100% productivity to hit the quota for the quarter, but also to be chosen as the refiner of the quarter to receive the waffle party. Obviously, one of the reasons why Dylan loves the waffle party so much. It is the only time they will experience sex, aside from potentially hooking up with other severed employees, coworkers. But this is like a separate, this is like, these people are like prostitutes for Lumon, assuming. We never see Dylan have sex, but we see them dancing around. We see them wearing the mask, dancing around in lingerie. And who knows what the goat thing is. Maybe we find out that Kier Eagan had sexual relations with goats and has like a very, like maybe all of these four people represent four people that Kier had sexual relationships with. Maybe. I don't know. You know, you hear stories about farmers having sex with sheep. I don't know if goat is necessarily the an alternative to that, but regardless, it is the only thing so far that would make the baby goats make any kind of sense. But anyway, while the dancing is going on, Dylan bounces. Dylan leaves. He is off to complete his mission. Cut to Selvig breaking down in her car, cursing, "Fuck you, Natalie, fuck you." Like she's just completely breaking down in her car, cursing Natalie, cursing everything, gets back to her house, starts trashing her house. We see that she has these poster boards, like what you would see in a classroom, right? Like a classroom art project type poster boards on her wall of different things, different sayings. She's tearing it off. She's trashing everything. She's trashing her altar to Kier that she prayed to at the beginning of one of the episodes. There's a diorama that gets destroyed. There's this medical equipment that we kind of saw in that episode as well that she's kind of clutching and crying to and asking, why? Cut to a doorbell. Mark rings the doorbell. She goes to answer it, and Mark mentions that Devin wanted to double check to see if Selvig wanted to go to this party. And he wanted to stop by just to remind her about that. And we see, obviously, Selvig is a little emotional. And, you know, she at first tells Mark that she's probably not going to go, but then she thinks about it a moment and says, I'll drive my own car. I'll drive myself. That way, if I feel uncomfortable or unsafe, I can drive myself home. Or afraid, I should say, uncomfortable or afraid, which is a very strange thing for Cobel / Selvig to say. But now that she is she's been fired from Lumon, she probably feels very vulnerable right now. She probably feels like she doesn't have that protection. You know, she's been rejected, and because she doesn't have that backing of Lumon anymore, you know, doing certain things, she feels like she's at danger. Which would make that statement, I mean, it's a weird statement, but knowing that what just happened, you can kind of gives you a view to her mental status at that moment, saying that if she feels uncomfortable or afraid, like why would she feel afraid? But that's what she says. Meanwhile, Irving, we see Irving's outie going home, pouring his coffee, about to do some painting again. Mark and Ricken, it's a book reading. Ricken asks if Mark brought his book. He forgot it, and Ricken's like, overcomplicates everything as always. There's somebody else maybe you can share with her, blah, blah, blah. At first he's like, well, it's a 15-minute drive. Why don't you just drive? You could make it back if you drive back home and get the book. It's like, but you can, book's over here. Like, Ricken's a very odd individual, and like overthinking very simple situations. But nonetheless, that's what the party is. It's a book reading for the book that Mark's innie has been reading and is obsessed with, along with Dylan. And then Mark says to his sister that, you know, she's like, he's giving her some compliments, like, oh, you're a good wife, good mother, all that kind of stuff. And he wants to talk to her later. He's got some big life-changing kind of things he wants to talk to her about. Just as he says that, he notices that Selvig shows up. Cut to Dylan gets to the security room. Cut to Irving is painting. Cut back to Selvig apologizing to Mark about her being emotional at the door. She's had a bad day at the quote-unquote shop. And Mark, you know, tells her a little bit of, you know, advice. Work is just work. You know, just, you got to be able to detach yourself from that. Which is a revelation to Selvig. She's like, oh, yes, these great words. Which also, she's like a religious fundamentalist that's been shunned by her religion. So somebody having some other kind of philosophy, she's probably starved for that. Which we'll see how that, being at this book reading and listening to Ricken, maybe she becomes a loyal follower of Ricken because of that. But just Mark letting her know that work is work was seemingly a revelation to her. Cut back to Dylan locking the door with like a belt or something like that. We see finally the gift that he got, which is one of those cube things that Mark had on his desk that's a portrait of Mark. But Dylan's is the group photo of the four of them, which makes sense that they would all be so emotional. Obviously, they are bonded in a way that he has never been bonded with anybody in that existence. They are both on a mission to free themselves. They all have the same goal. And it's a very touching thing to see Dylan, you know, set that cube down on the desk as like inspiration, right? That's his family photo inside of Severance. That 3D cube recreation of their group photo. Very touching, very touching. And he starts the procedure, which is not as simple. You know, he's got to go through the system, a system he's never used, to try and find the department, all this stuff. It's like it's comforting knowing Dylan is there, right? Out of all of them, if Helly was there, would be a bit more precarious. But like, or even Irving, or even Mark. Like, Dylan is the guy that makes the most sense to be trying to figure this stuff out and make it happen. Cut back to the party, and Selvig mentions that she overheard Mark talking about some life-changing stuff he wants to talk to his sister about. Mark lets her know that he's thinking of quitting Lumon, which on any other day would have elicited a different response from Selvig / Cobel. And Selvig like gives him, it's like, you don't need them anymore. Like, or Mark says he doesn't need them anymore, that he doesn't need the procedure. He's done running away from this grief of his wife. And Selvig gives him a hug, and she encourages him to do it, which is this, like, if she didn't get fired, this U-turn of Selvig would never have happened. And now she's encouraging Mark. Like, she clearly like has feelings for Mark. Like, it seems like the person she was as Selvig, being caring of Mark and giving him like the lavender tea and the chamomile cookies and all that stuff, that seems more like her true self. Whereas inside Lumon as Cobel was like her pretending to be a hard-ass boss. Which maybe is why she was so horrible inside. It's like, it's so weird. Like, anyway, she's encouraging. She tells him to get away from there, which is also mind-blowing. Right? Get away from there, Mark. But also we know that he's about to wake up. So even though Selvig has made this turn and is encouraging Mark to quit Lumon and get out of there, we know that Mark's innie is about to wake up, and he is currently hugging Cobel, who is somebody his innie knows as an enemy. And he is about to wake up in her arms, potentially. Clearly not somebody he can trust to tell what's going on. And we see Dylan on the inside struggling to reach the second switch because these switches are on separate sides of the door, and of course is designed that way to require two people, which makes me continue to wonder who was there to wake up Dylan when Milchick was interrogating him. But Dylan's struggling to reach these switches. And then we get cuts between all of the MDR crew on the outside. We finally see just a clip of Helly on the outside. She's holding a glass of champagne at like a party of some sort. We see Irving painting. And we see, of course, Mark embraced in a hug with Selvig / Cobel. And cut to Dylan flips the switch. Cut to black. End of the episode. Holy shit. Holy shit. The last episode, obviously, we're going to see how that all plays out. You know, Mark is going to wake up in the arms of Cobel. We're going to finally see what Helly's outie is up to. We're going to see what Irving ends up doing. You know, who's going to tell his dog he's not around anybody. And I'm sure we'll see if Irving understands his daydreams now. You know, he's going to wake up painting the hallway that goes to the elevator down to the testing floor. Right? So he's going to know on some level that as an artist, he's able to access thoughts and ideas from within this being severed. So there is still a connection there. Even though Mark doesn't recognize Miss Casey as his late wife, there's still images are still went both ways, especially for Irving. And maybe Irving has a different model of chip that is allowing that leak to happen, where his innie is having these visions of paint dripping and his outie is having these visions of this hallway to the testing floor. But the crazy thing is, I mean, not only is Mark going to wake up in the arms of his enemy Cobel, but he's at a book reading for a guy that wrote a book that changed his perception of things, of his reality within Lumon. And then Helly, who knows who she's around? We don't know that. She's at some kind of function. But that is the end of this episode, episode 8. What's for dinner? We got answers to what the waffle party is. The waffle party being a meal that they would never have, which isn't even like a great meal. It's just waffles with syrup. But for an innie, it's amazing. It's also a sexual experience of some sort. Some kind of ritualistic sexual experience. So clearly, like, things that they would kind of want as incentives, but like through the lens of like a religious craziness that is Kier Eagan and Lumon and all of that. So an interesting and potential answers, or at least some more information as far as the goats. Like, clearly the goat situation has more to do. It's not just a random thing that there are baby goats. There's clearly some connective tissue between the god that is Kier Eagan and whatever his relationship to goats were. Like, that's a reason why they have baby goats there. Maybe they use baby goats for testing. Maybe they use baby goats for other things. Who knows? But at least there's some connective tissue there. But yeah, that's it. That's it. Cobel, fired, loose cannon, kind of could become an ally in some ways. Could definitely become an ally. Or she could potentially use this to get back in the good graces. Who knows? Next episode, final episode of season 1 of Severance. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to breaking it down next week.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.